So in the last part, we had set up the layout of the application. In this part, let's start with the animation. The first thing we'll do is we'll animate this Uber logo and this bottom layout when the app first opens up. So this zooms in and this slides up nicely. For that, we'll use the React Native animatable library that we had installed. So let's import that in here. So the way we import it is import all as animatable from React Native animatable. Next, we need to change up our views that we want to animate. So the view we're looking to animate here is the one which has the Uber text in it. So we need to rename that to an animatable view. So the way that's done is it's animatable.view is what we want to make it. And then we can add the animation to it. So we can say animation is equal to zoom in. Iteration count is equal to 1 because we only want it to happen once. Let's save that. And as we can see, that animation is working. Similarly, let's add an animation to this bottom layout. So here, let's change this view that holds the complete bottom layout to an animatable view. And to this, the animation that we'll add is sliding up. And again, iteration count is going to be 1. As you can see, the slide in animation and the zoom in animation are working like we expect. Now it's time to start animating the individual elements. Our first main animation is when we click here on this text input, we want this layout to increase and take up the whole screen. So the first thing we want to do is we want to disable this text input. So let's come down here. In the view that contains the text input and this text, we'll put in a property called pointer events and set that to none. Now if we click here, you can notice that only the touchable opacity is working. Next, let's come here to the view, which has a height of 150. Change this to an animated.view. This is different from the animatable view. Animated.view is provided to us by React Native. So we come down here, rename this view to an animated.view. And on top here, make sure that we have imported animated. Coming down to our touchable opacity that we had created to surround the text input, we'll put in an onPress method here. So we'll say onPress is equal to, it should call a method called increase height of login. We're yet to create this method. So let's come here to the top and create this method. Increase height of login. And we'll do nothing here as of now. Let's create a component we'll mount. Inside this is where we'll set the default values of our particular layout. So the first thing we want is this.login height. And we'll set that a new animated.value of 150 as the default value. Here where we had set the height as 150, we'll change this to this.login height. If we refresh that, we see that the height remains the same. Now we can alter this value and animate the height of the layout. So come to the increase height of layout method. And let's add our first animation method. So we'll say animated.timing, pass in what we want to animate, which is this.login height. And here we want to animate it to a 2 value, which should be the height of the screen, which we have to set up. And we have to give a duration as well, which is going to be 500 milliseconds. So for the height, come here to the top and import something known as dimensions from React Native. And what we do is we create a constant called screen height, which is going to be equal to dimensions.get window.height. This will bring us the height of the screen, and we'll set that here to the 2 value. It's important to start the animation. Now if we refresh this and test this out, when we click on this, we see that the height increases. Obviously everything else doesn't look as nice. We're going to fix that shortly. So when the height of this view is getting animated to the screen height, we also want to animate the get moving with Uber text. We want to make sure that animation works in sync with the increasing height animation. So for that, we'll use the interpolate method available to us in React Native. So let's set up some values that we will animate. The first will be the header text opacity. For that, we'll say this.login height .interpolate. We'll start with an input range. I'll walk you through this once I write this. The beginning value will be 150 and the ending value will be the screen height, and the output range, which will start from 1 and end at 0. What this means is when this height is 150, we want the opacity to be 1, And when the height animates to the screen height, which is to the top, we want the opacity to change to 0. Similarly, we'll set up other values like margin top. So for that, let's just copy this here and just rename this to margin top. We want the margin top of the get moving with Uber text to change from 25 to 100 during the animation. Now let's replace the hard-coded values with these values. So coming down here, let's change the opacity to header text opacity. And let's change the margin top to margin top. And let's refresh this and test this out. And as always, change the view to an animated view. So any view we want to animate, it must be an animated view. So there we see, it looks just like it was with the hard-coded values. Let's animate this now. And as we can see, our header text opacity has changed and it has disappeared from the top. Now let's create the header back arrow over here. So that's going to be absolutely positioned. So we'll just put it at the top inside our view. We'll make it an animated.view because we want it to animate. And we'll give it some styles. So we'll say style is equal to position of absolute, height of 60 and a width of 60, top of 60 and a left of 25 with a Z index of 100. So that stays on the top. And the opacity that we'll give it is header back arrow opacity. We have to create this value, and inside the view, we'll put in a touchable opacity, which is an icon inside it of type MD arrow back and a color of black. Let's import icon from native base here. This icon has to be in brackets. And here, let's put in an onPress method as well, which we will create later. Let's call that decrease height of login. Let's create this header back arrow value now. So here, let's just copy margin top and let's change this to header back arrow opacity. And we want the output range to be 0 to 1 because first we don't want it to be displayed, and when the height increases, we want to change it to 1. Let's save that, refresh this. So as we can see right now, we're not seeing any back arrow here on the left. When we tap this, we see that back arrow appears. Now let's set up the method that decreases the height. So we already named the method. Let's just write it here. It's decrease height of login. And all it'll do is, it'll just do the opposite of this. So let's just copy this. And it changes the value to 150 in a duration of 500 seconds. Let's save that and refresh this. Now if we test this out, we'll see that the header back arrow appears nicely. When we press the header back arrow, it disappears with the get moving with Uber text coming back. To prevent this video from getting too long, I'll just stop this here. In the next video, we'll finish up this animation to show the keyboard moving up when we click on this with a button that comes on the right, along with this text moving to the top and this text changing to a mobile number. Till then, you guys can try this out.